Greetings, everyone. At the beginning of 2022, I said this is a year of reconciliation and change. This is a year of revelation for a lot of people. And when I talk about these things, I'm not just saying you. Sometimes I say you, but I'm including myself as well. And in March, there's so many things happening that is showing me that this definitely is a year of transformation and change for me as well. Now I'm going to share a story time, and I have many more story times to share. Because guess what? These are my truth, and I know that there are many people or many individuals who are going through the same thing. And some people are so discouraged. They're at the point where they don't want to live because they think that they're alone. And I'm going to tell you, you're not alone. And I'm also going to say to you that it might take long, but it will not be forever. All this suffering. And when you think that people have hurt you and they get away with it, I'm going to tell you that they won't. And it's not because you're going to lift your hand to do anything. The universe, or nature will sort itself out. Now, this story time is about and I pause because in my background I have my incense burning. I make sure I set up the environment so I can talk about this without raw energy, okay? Yes, so I'm going to talk about when I first conceived my first child, and touch a little bit on what it was like to be a mother living in a strange country where you don't know anyone. And I'm doing this video because I'm not just sharing with people that I don't know, people that don't know me watch my videos. And so this one is going to be for you too. Because sometimes we have to remind people because they forget. And then there's this expression, it's not the one who crap and leave it on the road, is the one who step in it that remembers. So the one who leaves it there don't remember, but the ones who walk in it do. And as women, many of us are traumatized by family members, by loved ones, by in their relationship and all that stuff. And people always expect you to just carry on, especially if you're the type of person like me, who for many years would keep everything inside. I'm going to continue this conversation, okay? Because it doesn't take away from who I am as a spiritual person. Because until you deal with the mind, the body, and the spirit, you can't merge these things to become whole. So you have to address all areas of your life. So I came here in September, and by November I was pregnant with my first child at 22 years old. And I was very excited. I mean, that's the only child I have that when 9 months came and she wasn't ready to come out, I was willing to wait another 3 months because I was really enjoying my pregnancy. I got a job at a wallpaper clearance house across from where I was attending school full time. So I would go to school in the morning at 8 and I would finish, I think I finished at 1. And then I started my job at 1, but it was across the street and they would give me just a little time just across the street to come over. So by 1:10 I'd be there. And I'd work there from 1:10 until 9 o'clock at night. Every day except Saturday, because I was a Seventh-day Adventist and I told him I'm not working on Saturdays. My then companion was working somewhere and he was making $11 an hour. In, let's say, by the time I'm entering my second trimester, none of my clothing that I brought from Jamaica fit anymore. None of it. Of course, you know what that's like. You start growing and I start gaining weight. And I was hearing, oh, you're supposed to eat for two. Well, I was eating for two. I gained literally 80 pounds in that first pregnancy. But that's for another time. So I'm working the $6.50 an hour, partner making $11 an hour. And I'm working and going to school full time. When I get home at 10 o'clock at night or 10:30 at night, I would go home and cook. hmm When I was about 6 months pregnant, I was not getting away from wearing my then husband's shirts and stuff. You know, they're bigger and would hide my pregnancy. I went to this store on Eglinton. It was an Indian store. And I remember seeing two dresses that I really liked. Same style, but I didn't like the pregnancy clothing. I just wanted to buy extra large clothes. And when I went in that store, the dress was for $10 Canadian. And I picked two, but I didn't have $20. I picked two. He was with me and he said to me, why don't you put it on layaway until they get paid? In my $6.50 an hour job, I purchased a crib, a used crib from a friend. Girl, you're real wicked, you know. That was 31 years ago. And you sold me a crib that your child that was 18 months was no longer using, and you sold it to me for $100. Mm-mm. Anyway, I bought the crib from a friend. They came to my house. She came to my house with her boyfriend and set that crib up for me. At the time, those of you who know Byway, the Byway store was one of those big stores that we could buy all kinds of stuff for kids. And I went there and bought my sleepers and, baby stuff. Because every time I was getting paid, I was going to buy the stuff. I was 6 months and I'm saying, okay, they always say, make sure by 7 months you have the basic things because you never know if you're going to go into labor. 7 months in, not even a dime. Plus, this man said, I have to give him half of the rent. Half of the rent. And his rent was $300 at the time because we were we were sharing with someone else. So I had to give him my $150 and I had to be preparing for the baby. Let me tell you something, people. It is the grace of the Most High why I'm not out here talking some. Okay. Everything I needed for that child, I had to take care of it. When the time came for her to be born, some relative of his asked him what time I was due. I was way past due. In fact, few days before I actually gave birth, that guy threw a boot, and hit me in my stomach. Mm-hmm. When the time came, I was a married woman, and the time came for me to give birth. I got up in the morning, I got dressed. I was staying at the house with the husband's brother and him because the brother was visiting. Brother knew I was going to the hospital. I went to the hospital early morning, and when I was going, the taxi driver said to me, oh, don't you have any family, any relatives you can call? And I said, no, I don't. He says, oh, but you're married. I said, yes, because it's on my ring. I said, yeah, I am. He said, oh, call him. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I go to the hospital. I'm going to be induced. So I knew I had to come in that day. I knew I'm going to be induced. And the nurse said, oh, my goodness, everybody's there with somebody. everyone is there with somebody, sister, cousin, whoever. Me, 23 years old, look like I'm 16, there by myself. And the nurse said, why don't you call your husband? I'm like, no. Because even though I was so young, I'm thinking this should be a very exciting time for both of us. If I have to tell him that I'm due now, I'm gonna have the baby today, something is amiss. One time we went to get our ultrasound done. I was so happy, and he came along with me. And by the time I go in to do the ultrasound, he was gone somewhere. Never came back until afterwards. I went to the hospital and I gave birth to that child. Hey, you have some real dirty, evil men in the world. And when you're young, the signs are there, but you don't recognize it. Okay? I gave birth to that child. And that night, when he was asking for me, his brother said, you should be ashamed of yourself. You just gave birth to your child and you don't know, because I didn't call him. When I gave birth to that baby, I picked up the phone to call a friend, a lady that I was sharing place with. We were sharing place with that lady. And she wasn't even home that day. She was gone out. She was working. And I spoke to her 7-year-old and her 4-year-old children. I wanted to talk to somebody so bad. Juliana, I'll never forget those kids. And I told her I had a baby, because they used to always come in my room and always ask me questions about the baby. And her little brother used to always, hold up his 2 knees and pretend like he's pushing out a baby, like he's mocking me. 4 years old. Charles, his name was Charles. Juliana and Charles. I called them. I wanted to talk to somebody about this awesome news. And it was 2 children that I spoke to about giving birth to my daughter. So the next day, he comes to the hospital. First of all, I was so hungry. A friend said she's coming to see me. Well, one of my schoolmates so happened to call me, and I told her I was at the hospital. And she says, wow, can I bring you something? I said, yeah, food, I'm hungry. She carried curry goat and rice. I put it aside. There were some things going on with my health. And of course, my daughter, as soon as she comes out, all 3 kids that I have, they're induced. And all 3 kids are taken at birth and go or rush off to somewhere. There are always some issues with the girls. He comes to the hospital and he sits down and he says, I don't like hospitals. And the food that the girl brought for me, he ate it and then said bye. Now, I'm not going to talk about my second child in this one. I'm just talking about the birth of my first child. And so while I'm in the hospital, someone sent a social worker to me to say, wow, you're so young. And listen, I was like a champion, the way I held myself, giving birth to my child. They were like, wow, you're so strong. And you sure this is your first baby and all of that. And they spoke to me and they said, you don't have to stay in an environment where you don't feel loved or appreciated. You don't have to do that. You can find a place to live, and we can help you. But at the time, I have the church nonsense in my mind that you're supposed to stay married to somebody no matter what. So I'm not even thinking that's even a possibility. I go home. I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so lonely. I'm so, and again, whosoever I know at school and all that stuff, I'm not telling them. Well, I did one lady, and I didn't tell her anything, but she was just a very wise woman, and she would sometimes ask me questions. She was the one who would tell me how I get to my appointments, because I was still new. How I get to my appointments. One time I had to go for ultrasound, and I asked my then husband, and the information he gave me when I told her, she said, no, That's incorrect. Guy sending me on some wild goose chase or something. So I give birth and I go back home and I gave him money. Listen, literally, I had pennies. I had to shake out my purse, search all over to get enough money to buy a pack of diapers. I mean, pennies. I gave it to him and he never came back with it until like early in the morning. He was hanging out with his cousins. So all that stuff was on my mind. And I remember washing, because girl was from Jamaica fresh, and I bought myself some bird eye nappy, and I was washing those and hanging them outside the house. But because my mind was so overwhelmed and I was just so sad, I know that the door, if you go outside and pull it up, it's going to be closed from the outside. So I go outside, I step out there and I close it, and I was locked out. And then I started thinking all kind of thing. What if I'm out here and she started choking? And oh my gosh, I panic and I called my neighbor, this Italian man. I said, can you please come kick off the door for me? He's like, no, because you're renting and they might charge me. Call the police. I called the police, and when they came, they luckily, they go up with the ladder, and upstairs bedroom window was open. They just removed the mesh and they were able to go in and let me in. At that point, I was like, why am I staying with this guy? So I called the number and I went to stay at a shelter that was for teenage moms. They accepted me because I looked like a teenager. That's just a tip of the iceberg. A tip. So how dare you, any of you, try to make it seem like my children know what it's like to have a father? And how dare you even think that you can make them uncomfortable? Who can judge? Listen, you see, all the children from your family are children that I love. And although, it's been 25 years since I divorced that man, I still love his mom. I still love the kids that I know from here. That's why I'm a little guarded with some of the stuff that I'd want to say in this video. It's not the one who let the load on the ground, it's the one who's stepping it. Me, I'm a strong woman and I'm sharing my story. I'm sharing my story because I want a woman to know that if you've been a single mother and you have to raise your children on your own and you have to go through abuse and all kinds of nonsense, you're not alone. But you don't have to put up with it and you don't have to tolerate them. And I mean, the men I'm talking, don't the ones who abuse you or abandon you, don't have to tolerate them. You don't have to make excuse for them. And when you do the right thing for yourself and your children, you don't have to feel guilty about it. They forget, but you don't. There will be a lot more of these stories to share, okay? I'm just going to pause for now because my family is calling me. And trust me, when my family go on the road, they're going to be calling 20 times. So we'll talk. That's the difference. Now I have a family of people that care for me. Sometimes it's annoying. See? Nothing stays the same. That hole that was in my heart was filled when I met somebody who did everything for me. Tie my shoelace, bathe me, comb my hair, did whatever a woman wants to get done. He'd do it for me. Nothing lasts forever. So whatever pain and suffering you're going through right now, Just take heart. The stories are going to get worse before they get better. But I am a conqueror. I overcame. Yes, indeed. Stay blessed, everyone.